right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another exciting installment of the Arkansas Alumni Association's Lunch and Learn series. My name is Mary Kate Harrison, and I'm the Executive Projects Coordinator here at the Alumni Association. And today we have an exciting presentation with the U of A's Director of Athletics, Hunter Yurachek, and one of our Arkansas Alumni National Board members and former Razorback star athlete, Linda Bedford-Jackson. So before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone to please keep yourselves on mute so that we can all hear Hunter and Linda as best as possible. And also the chat today will be off, but you can submit potential questions for Linda and Hunter in the chat that will be sent to me, the host only. I have the privilege to introduce Linda today. As I mentioned, she's a former Razorback star athlete and was the first African-American female student athlete on the Arkansas women's track and field team during the 1976-1977 season. And you can see her background. That's a picture of her right in the middle there. She was also the first female sports editor of the Arkansas Traveler, which is the University of Arkansas student-run newspaper. Linda is a 1980 graduate of the University of Arkansas with a bachelor's degree in journalism. She is a 40-year communications professional who now serves as the university's as the director of the Center for Civic Engagement and Community Outreach, and is also the co-owner of Yvette's Bakery Box. She earned a master's degree in business administration from LeTourneau University in Dallas and was part of the Harvard Management Institute at Harvard Graduate School. She is also a proud charter member of the UA's Phi Theta chapter of the Zeta Phi Beta sorority. So thank you for joining us today, Linda.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be a part of this Lunch and Learn. And so I just want to take a few minutes to introduce Hunter Yurachek. He, of course, is the Vice Chancellor and Director of Athletics at the U of A and has been in that position since December of 2017. He has a track record of successes leading athletic programs around the country. He served as Director of Athletics at Coastal Carolina University. He was also named Under Armour FCS Athletic Director of the Year in 2014. He's worked at the University of Akron, University of Virginia, Western Carolina University, Vanderbilt University, Wake Forest University, just successes all along the way. And of course, he's brought all of those successes to the University of Arkansas. He is a native of Richmond, Virginia. He earned a bachelor's degree in business from Guilford College in 1990, a master's degree in sports administration from the University of Richmond in 1994, and he was a 4-year letter winner in basketball at Guilford. And of course, Yurachek and his wife, Jennifer, have 3 sons, and we're just happy to have him on this conversation today. So before we get into our questions and dialogue, Hunter, would you like to say something before I start with our series of questions?
Well, Linda, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for all you have done and meant to the University of Arkansas and your very distinguished career as a student athlete, and then what you have done since then, which I guess now is, as I said, almost 40 years. Hard to believe, I'm sure.
It can be.
I'm guessing the facilities don't look any different than when you were here 40 years ago.
Facilities are very different than when I was there at the university. Of course, I lived in Pomfret. I started out in Future, but I lived in Pomfret, which was right there by the track. And that's what it was just a track. And so now, of course, you know, facilities that are on the campus today did not even exist when I was on campus. We had no indoor track, and so we didn't have any of those facilities, and all of the stellar facilities that are on campus now of baseball, softball, track, indoor facility, tennis, those facilities just did not exist back in the day. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to see all of those operations, and I know that there's more to come, correct?
There is more to come. There's construction happening as we speak. Well, actually, it's raining in Fayetteville, forever's in Fayetteville, but we've got two facility projects under construction. I think we'll talk about those later.
Yeah, when I was in Fayetteville in February, and I got a chance to go to the indoor track meet at the track facility, which of course is a world-class facility, and it was just so exciting to be in that facility and to watch the teams perform at that particular time. So let's just start out with we talked a little bit about your career around the country. So tell us how you came to the University of Arkansas.
It's an interesting but very quick story and process. I received a call on a Tuesday afternoon from a search consultant inquiring about my interest in talking to Chancellor Steinmetz about the Director of Athletics position at the University of Arkansas. Of course, Arkansas has a storied history. I've been around college athletics in the Southeastern Conference long enough to know that this would be a job that anyone would want that's pursuing an athletic director position. Chancellor Steinmetz called me the following day. We talked for a few hours by way of phone. Ironically, that Saturday, the University of Houston, where I was the director of athletics, was hosting the University of Arkansas in a men's basketball game in Houston, Texas. Chancellor Steinmetz was coming for an alumni event. He stopped by my office there in Houston, and him and Sandy, his wife, and my wife, we met for a few hours to further discuss the position. Went to the game that night. We sat on opposite sides of the facility there. Matt Zimmerman cursed me out as I walked by one time. Did you not, Matt? So.
That was no, the first time I thought it was great, but at halftime we were getting beat pretty good. So I'd had enough of you by halftime for sure. Yeah. And about 48 hours later, you were my boss.
Yeah. So the University of Houston played a great game that night. The University of Arkansas was on the back end of their trip back from the West Coast and didn't have a great deal of energy and legs that night. So, Saturday night I left that arena thinking I had just won an incredible game. By Monday morning, I had just lost that incredible game because I was the new director of athletics at the University of Arkansas. So it was a quick story, and that's how I arrived. I'd been in the state of Arkansas for about an hour. One time I was a member of the NCAA Sportsmanship and Ethical Conduct Committee and was making a presentation to a student athlete at Harding University. I flew in, I believe it was to Little Rock, drove to Harding, made the presentation, went back to the airport, got on the plane. Other than that experience, I had never been to the state of Arkansas. Jennifer, my wife, and I were landing out at Drake about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I looked out the window of the plane and I turned to her, I said, I sure hope we like it. And I will tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, we have loved it. The people here in Northwest Arkansas, across the state of Arkansas, are truly what makes this state and this community so very special. They were unbelievably welcoming to Jennifer and I, and it's felt like home from the first day.
Well, that is just fantastic, and we're happy to have you. And I know, being on the National Alumni Association board, we've heard some inside stories about those meetings and plane trips and all that when you were a part of the interview process. And so it's we're glad all worked out and that you made it here well. So let's. I know you have a tremendous responsibility. You're managing athletes, you're managing alumni concerns, a tremendous athletic program, you have a board, just all kinds of entities that you're working with in order to ensure a successful athletic program. So let's talk a little bit about the academic successes. I know, being an athlete myself, when I was at the University of Arkansas, I was able to, secure scholarships, athletic scholarships, academic scholarships. And of course, during our particular time as an athlete, we had our 2-a-day practices. We were the first students to arrive on campus in the fall, the last students to leave in June, when we were participated in national competitions. We were gone from campus every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, coming back on Sunday. And so it was just tremendous as a student balancing all of that, as an athlete balancing that, work, study, editor of the Arkansas Traveler, and then working with the yearbook. And managing to do all of that and graduate in 4 years. So I'm a proud graduate. So talk to us about the academic successes of our athletes, the athletic program in general, and what you have to manage and what you have to work with.
Sure. We truly believe our mission is building champions and Razorbacks for life. And that is a three-pronged approach where we're creating opportunities for our student athletes to have success academically, athletically, and in their personal development. And that's our three-pronged approach. And we take that first prong very, very seriously because you've seen the commercials. 99% of our student athletes that are competing here right now, they're not going to turn professional in their sport. What they do academically is going to define their success when they leave the University of Arkansas. It's very important to us as a staff that our student athletes have academic success. We had 107 student athletes who earned their degree from the University of Arkansas during this past 19-20 years. Some of those student athletes graduated in December, some graduated this past May, some will graduate and earn their degrees this summer. We have what I have deemed the Razorback graduation rate was 98% this year. And how I define that is if a student athlete exhausts their athletic eligibility on our campus, did they earn their degree? And 98% of our student athletes who exhausted their athletic eligibility during this past academic year have earned their degree. You'll see other graduation rates, whether it's the graduation success rate or the federal graduation rate, but I feel like that is a true metric because they're ending their athletic careers as a Razorback. And if they're ending their athletic career as a Razorback, they should end their academic career as a graduate of the University of Arkansas. And so we take great pride in that 98% Razorback graduation rate. This past spring semester was a challenging one for our student athletes, as in mid-March, really how they were used to learning and how they're used to being tutored and things like that ended. Our student athletes achieved a 3.43 grade point average during this spring semester, which was just incredible because they had to learn how to learn differently, where they were learning online. They didn't have access to the same degree of tutoring, in-person tutoring, as they had. 19 of our teams had a cumulative GPA of 3.0 or better during this spring semester. So our student athletes, when we talk about building champions and Razorbacks for life and that first prong, that academic success, we've got an unbelievable facility in the Jones Student Athlete Success Center. We have a very deep academic success team led by Felicia Sane and her staff that monitor the daily academic activities of our student athletes. And we have great support from our faculty across this campus in understanding what our student athletes go through on a daily basis and allowing them to do what they want to do and supporting them to make sure that they have academic success as well.
And that is, that faculty support was just so important because as I mentioned earlier, because we were gone a lot, but we still had to do the work. And so it was really important to have those individuals who are very supportive of the program and supportive athletes. Well, we put this focus a little bit on the women's track program, but of course, starting out when I was there in 1976, of course, we, that was during a time where, of course, women's program was part of AIAW, and then we moved into the NCAA, and that was just a tremendous move and tremendous difference. And of course, I was there when Coach McDonald became the head coach of the men's track team. He was the cross country coach, and then he was the head coach of the men's track team. And the track coach at that time, Coach Renfro, became the coach of the women's track team. We no longer had to share the coach, as you see in the photo, between the swim team and the track team was no longer doing that dual position during that Title IX era. So again, to be able to see the men's track team under Coach McDonald and his 30 years of leadership and all of the national championships, and with the women, just coming along too, and now, so many national championships. And from where we started back in the day, we thought we were just top athletes, but of course these athletes today have so much more as far as training, as far as academics. And so again, just something to be proud of. And I'm sure coming into this Arkansas legacy was something that had to weigh on you coming into a program like Arkansas. Was that pretty much the case for you?
Oh, absolutely. And before I address that, notice that Dorita Radcliffe, who is our sport administrator for men's and women's track and field, is on the call. Dorita, welcome. I give her a great deal of credit for keeping those programs together. We're one of, I think we're the only now still separated men's and women's track and field programs. It gives us some certain advantages, but it is a challenge to manage. And Dorita does an incredible job of managing that. So Dorita, if you'll just wave to everybody so they can see.
I'm in Egypt. Let me come back to Fayetteville.
So, Linda, I had come from the University of Houston, who was in the Southwestern Conference previously with the University of Arkansas, and had a very prideful track and field program of its own. So I was well aware of the success that the University of Arkansas had and continued to have in track and field. And it was exciting to be a part of that. And I truly believe that the success that Coach McDonald had raised collegiate track throughout our country. And we were being chased by a number of people. And as we move to the Southeastern Conference, you can see how track and field on both the men's and women's side has improved incredibly. When we go to the national championships, the Southeastern Conference is well represented from top to bottom in a national championship event. And I think the University of Arkansas played a significant role in elevating track and field across this country with success they had on the men's side and then on the women's side as well.
Well, I agree, and certainly can appreciate and just really proud of the accomplishments. I remember, back in the day, Arkansas made a commitment that they did not want to just be a powerhouse in football. They wanted to be a powerhouse in every sport. And you could feel that, and you knew that as an athlete at the university when I was there back in 1976. So again, that goal to make sure that all sports were stellar and nationally ranked sports, I think it's been just wonderful to watch and to see throughout the years. And I know the football team is going to get there again. So I'm in Austin, Texas with the Longhorns here in Austin, Texas. So, I can't wait until we get back to our stellar position in football. And I'm sure
Me neither.
I'm sure that's a daily conversation for you.
It is for sure.
And so let's talk a little bit about the athlete and just being on the campus. Of course, as an African-American athlete on the University of Arkansas campus, it had its challenges. It was not easy. I mentioned what I had to go through as far as academics and getting that degree. There were challenges all along the way, but at the end of the day, I am a proud U of A graduate and proud of that degree. So let's talk a little bit about when you're dealing with students. I mean, we had to deal with all kinds of issues on campus, off campus, as it relates to equity, inclusion. And so you've gone through some challenges, maybe not at Arkansas, but at other institutions where athletes have had to use their voice to speak out, to address various issues around campus as it relates to things happening on campus, things happening around them. I mean, athletes are people, you know, from various communities. So talk about how you manage that so that athletes can still have a voice. And I will tell you that I was an athlete with a voice. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you manage that today.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I was a former student athlete. I have two sons that one that was a former student athlete, one that is a student athlete, and one younger one that hopes to be a student athlete. And the student athlete experience has always been at a premium for me more than anything. That's why we are here at the University of Arkansas, why we have a Department of Athletics. So it's why we have a university. It's for the students. It's not for the director of athletics. It's not for the coaches. It's not for the staff. It is for the student athletes, and student athletes have access to me. They have my cell phone number. I go to our Student Athlete Advisory Council meetings on a regular basis. We just established here in the past few weeks an African-American Student Athlete Leadership Council to deal with some of the issues that are happening within our society and are localized to our department, to our university, and this community to help improve the experience of our African-American student athletes. It's been a great education process for me, learning more about their experience as African-American student athletes. Student athletes should have a voice. This is their experience. Those of us that work in the Department of Athletics, if we're student athletes or not, we've had our collegiate experience. This is about their experience, and we want them, we work every day. We talk about it every day as a department. Our number one goal is to make sure that our student athletes have an opportunity to have a great experience as student athletes at the University of Arkansas, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of what sport they participate in. We have 465 student athletes, 19 sports programs, and Linda, you touched on it, and that philosophy still hasn't changed. We want each of our 19 sports programs to have an opportunity to compete for and win SEC and national championships year in and year out. We had 11 of those 19 teams before their seasons were cut short that were ranked in the top 25 nationally at the University of Arkansas. We were ranked as an athletic program in the Learfield Directors Cup 24th, which is the second highest rated SEC team. And that Learfield Cup kind of evaluates your athletic department as a whole, how your sports teams are doing collectively together as a unit. And so it's very important for me that our student athletes have a voice, that they have access to their director of athletics. And, you know, we survey our student athletes at the end of their year multiple times. We want to hear from them about their experience in each of those areas, because we can't improve their experience if they don't tell us about their experience. And all of that feedback is not positive. And but we can't work to improve their experience if we don't understand what it is.
And that certainly, you know, that certainly makes for a better environment for all of the students. I know that, you know, as an athlete, we were sometimes isolated. I mean, we did have experiences where, you know, like I said, on the track, we were on the you know, practicing with the men's track team. When the weather was 10 below zero, you know, we had to go into the football training facility and work out, you know, with the members of the football team, because the weather was just, you know, the snow and ice and all of that. But in many instances, sometimes the student population as a whole, unless you're seeing an athlete in class, you don't really get a chance to interact with the athletes on campus. And sometimes you can be just so far away from them, you know, when they're on the field, when they're on the court and what have you. So talk a little bit about how we ensure that our athletes are part of this global overall community and not just isolated in that athletic world.
Yeah, Linda, that is a great question. And I think that is one of the challenges we face because of the schedules of student athletes. And I think one of the ways is how they get to class and that they go to class, because that's the first place they're going to interact with other students on this campus. is to make sure they're interacting with them in that academic setting, which is the main reason they're here. And that's their opportunity to branch out. I know some of our coaches afford the opportunities for our student athletes to be members of various sororities and fraternities. And that's another social aspect that takes a great deal of time, especially during that rush and initiation process for those students. And it's for us to get our student athletes out in front of our students. Sometimes we'll have events up on the quad there in campus where we're trying to put a face with a name with the students and the student athletes, because we need the students to come support those student athletes. They're fellow students. It's important for the environments and all of our venues that the student body comes to our venues, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, soccer, softball, whatever the case may be, to support their fellow students. And there's also a long-term effect with that, because if you don't have that experience as a member of the student body of coming to athletic events to support your fellow students while you're a student here, when you become an alumnus of this institution, it's going to be hard for us to get you back to those athletic events, because if that wasn't part of your experience during your 4 years on this campus, it's going to be hard for us to make that a priority for your experience when you're an alumni of the University of Arkansas. So it's important that we have that engagement, and that engagement works both ways for students and student athletes.
And Linda, you'd be happy to know that we also have a number of student athletes who are members of Black Greek Letter Organization. Just in the 3 years I've been here, there have been 6 student athletes who've played from basketball. Recently, a women's track student athlete played to Delta, but there are a number.
That is wonderful. As I mentioned, I'm a charter member of a Greek letter organization there on campus, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority. And of course, and all the other organizations and associations that we were involved with at the time, it just makes it's a lot to manage, but it's real important. I remember too, as a student, there were some long lines to get those tickets to those football games. So I hope that, I don't know what the process is like today. What is the process like today for students to get tickets to get? I mean, you just had to almost camp out to get tickets. Is that still the case?
Well, it's not as much the case for football right now. Students have the ability to purchase student access passes, which provides them access to football, basketball, baseball games throughout the year. I will tell you what was exciting to see at Bud Walton Arena was that there were campouts at Bud Walton Arena this year, specifically the Kentucky game, because we sold close to 10,000 student access passes for the year. We only have 3,000 student seats in Bud Walton Arena. So as basketball got really exciting this year and got off to a great start, you started to see students waiting in line for hours upon hours to have access to Bud Walton Arena. I hope that's what starts to happen with football again in the future.
It's interesting because whenever I get the opportunity, and I tell people all the time, it's like you have not experienced sports until you've experienced an Arkansas football game, an Arkansas basketball game. Of course, we were in Barnhill Arena back in the day. And I tell people all the time, it's like you don't know how to tailgate. You need to come to Arkansas to understand and know how to tailgate, because the sports program is just so exciting. And whenever I get a chance or opportunity, it's like you're coming to the game with me, because you have got to experience this for yourself, because there's just so much electricity around those various sports programs. And that includes, whether it's softball, baseball, track, tennis, all of those other sports. It's just amazing. The excitement, I think, is just contagious.
It is for sure. I've had the privilege of being around college athletics for 27 years and been to several big games, I would say. I don't know that I've been in a venue that was louder than Bud Walton Arena when John Calipari was ejected from the game. That had been the loudest venue I have ever been in to watch a sporting event at that time.
Do you have those meters that measure the noise level of these various crowds?
I don't know that we have those in place. We have some video board images that make it seem like the noise meter is going up, but I don't know that we have a true noise meter in any of our venues.
Right. A little bit earlier today, you mentioned the pandemic and COVID-19 and how that has just changed how we interact on a daily basis. So, of course, you know, there's talk all around the country about athletics and these sports programs and, you know, whether they're going to exist, if they start, whether they're going to start in the spring, you know, moving athletes to a different location. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I know it's hard to be able to let's get a feel for what the fall is going to look like, how to protect athletes, because again, you're in such close quarters, just in every place. So how do you protect athletes, and give us a little bit of insight on how the sports programs will be managed in the fall in the middle of this pandemic?
Sure. You know, we started to welcome back student athletes in various phases on June the 8th. When we get to Monday, July the 13th, all of our athletic facilities will be open, and we'll have over 300 student athletes that are back on campus in the area using our facilities, mainly for voluntary activities such as weightlifting and other conditioning exercises. Football can actually begin what is called summer access this Monday, where their coaches can be with them on the field for 2 hours in shorts and a t-shirt working out. What I'm really proud of is our sports performance team, our facility staff. We do not have one positive case that has been tied to any of our athletic facilities since we opened our offices on June the 1st and our athletic facilities on June the 8th. We have had student athletes that have tested positive, but all but one of those cases are from a student athlete traveling back home or to some other location and bringing that virus, as we have traced it, back with them. We have not had one, again, not one, that has been passed locally within any of our facilities. Now that's becoming more and more challenging for us. We had a head coach's call today because they're 18 to 22-year-olds. Most of them are not scared by this virus. Most of them, they have seen their friends, and it's been few that have tested positive and have very little symptoms, if any, of this virus. And we continue to try to educate them about the importance of wearing a mask, maintaining social distancing, washing their hands, and sanitization. You know, what we have been told is we're not going to test our way out of COVID-19. Testing is not a medicine for COVID-19. It's what you do as an individual, not only for your own well-being, but for the well-being of those that you come in contact with. And we're trying to allow these student athletes to have a social aspect to their life, but almost create an artificial bubble per se. That's pretty easy for us right now because it's just student athletes mainly in this area. As we get to mid to late August, and we welcome back anywhere from 15 to 20,000 students back to the area, that's going to become more of a challenge for us. And, you know, it is a continual education process by our head coaches and staff to these young men and women. And what we continue to reinforce, you know, spring sports, their seasons were cut in half. Men's and women's basketball, gymnastics, swimming did not get to participate in their championship season. We don't want to go through that again. And we've got to all take responsibility as coaches, as staff members, and as student athletes to see if we can get to the fall sports season. And we can do what we need to do here in the state of Arkansas, within Northwest Arkansas, but we're a member of the Southeastern Conference. There's 11 different states represented within the Southeastern Conference. Texas, Florida, South Carolina are really struggling right now with this virus. And so that could have an impact on what our fall sports season looks like. We could do things really, really well here in Arkansas, but what other states do could impact us negatively. So, Linda, I didn't know if I answered that question right now. I'm happy to take some questions from others that are on the call. I don't know if you've gotten some yet.
Thank you. And we will, yes, we have a mechanism set up to answer questions that come in. But let me just get you mentioned that the seasons were cut in half in some instances. So how is that managed? I mean, what what does that look like? The season was cut in half. I mean, do we just look at the records, the season? Do they come back, or how does that work?
That's a great question. I think for our spring sports season, for our coaches, I mean, the records stand as they were. I think our softball team ended the season 19-6, and they had won their last couple of games. The baseball, Kevin Trainer's I think they won their last 3 games, and I think they had a walk-off in their last game, and so that counted. Gymnastics was getting ready to compete in an SEC event, so it just stopped. So the winter sports, we kind of consider those completed seasons. Coaches that had earned bonuses for those sports, we paid those out. For our spring sports, none of our coaches had an opportunity to earn any bonuses, so it just kind of stopped in mid-year. And most of our student athletes returned to their homes, and we closed all of our facilities at that point in time.
So when we talk about the pandemic, we also have parents in that equation. And I'm sure in your position, you get a lot of questions or comments, or you get a lot of information that you need to discuss with parents. So talk a little bit about the parent relationship in your position as you're working with and managing the number of athletes that are on the campus participating in the sports programs.
Sure. I will tell you that from my standpoint, the parental relationship really it is inherent more on the head coach than it is on the director of athletics. I do meet with parents during the recruiting process, but the real relationship exists between the head coach and those parents and that student athlete. For as far as COVID was concerned, we put together a sports performance team, and our facility staff did a really nice job of putting together a Q&A document that we sent to all of our student athletes and all of our student athlete parents. And then myself and our senior staff and some of our doctors, we offered the parents an opportunity for a couple of nights to have a Zoom call with us to answer any of their questions. What we called it is we were trying to create a plan that instilled confidence in student athletes, in parents, in our staff, and eventually when we have fans in our venues, that we have done everything that we can to mitigate their child's risk to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Candid with parents during those Zoom calls that we are going to have student athletes who test positive for COVID-19. And that has happened. And what I asked them to do is to trust us that when that happens, that our medical team, our sports performance team has put together a great plan, not only to protect your son or daughter who may have tested positive, but those that they have come in contact with. And that plan has worked incredibly to date. And I don't foresee that changing, but what we were trying to do with parents as far as COVID is really install a level of confidence that we were going to do everything we could to protect their sons and daughters.
Sure. And so as we talk about an issue like that, I know when you have athletes, and you can see from the picture that I was the only African-American athlete on that team. So you have students who come in from various towns, various communities. Some students have never interacted with African-Americans or individuals from other races. And so how do you ensure that parents or give parents a sense of confidence that coming to the University of Arkansas, I can say that, as an athlete, we had a great relationship. I had a great relationship with our team members. I was a team captain. And so, but how do you ensure that our students, our athletes, set the example on how to be a team, be a part of a team, and how to work with individuals who are not the same race as you, and so just come from a different experience? How do you manage that as well?
Linda, that's a great question. We have an area called our student athlete development area. We have a very robust staff that puts together programming throughout the course of the year for our student athletes that I think helps address and challenge student athletes in some of those areas. I think our coaches, many of them do a great job because You've got to have that cohesion on your courts, on your fields, etc., where young men and women, regardless of their race, have to work together for a common goal. And so I think you have coaches that do a really good job of building that camaraderie amongst their teams. But it's not without fault, for sure. That African American Student Athlete Leadership Council that I mentioned, one of the things that they brought up is I think was a really good point, is that we may not be portraying a really clear picture of what their experience may be on this campus as an African American student athlete. One student athlete talked about came from a very diverse high school and stepped foot in her first class at the University of Arkansas, and she was the only African American person in that class. And that was not how the experience was portrayed. And these student athletes have roughly a 48-hour recruiting visit, but that's not how that was portrayed on the recruiting visit. And so we've got to get better at that. And that's one of the things the student athletes during this recent meeting identified. And so we're doing a pretty good job of what you asked the question about, but we've got some room for improvement, and we're going to work to improve on that.
So as we talk about and we continue focusing on the athlete, there are some emerging issues in the athletic world. I know you heard that in some instances, athletes now can own their likeness, their image, their name, and they can also, as a way to earn income. Of course, when I was running, you were an amateur athlete and you could not accept a dime, or it would interfere with your status as an amateur athlete. And of course that made it very difficult when you're trying to get funds to go to college. And of course the scholarship, when I graduated, of course I had a full scholarship, but as a walk-on, that scholarship had to advance into different areas for larger and larger amounts. So talk a little bit about some of the emerging issues in intercollegiate athletics and how students may be able to benefit from that.
Yeah, so for those of you that aren't familiar with name, image, and likeness, right now when a student athlete comes on a college campus, the university has them, in a sense, sign their rights to their name, image, and likeness over to the university. And so they do not have an opportunity to monetize their name, image, and likeness like a student or any member of the community could do so. And, as social media has evolved, many of these student athletes have become very well versed and have incredible numbers of followers that companies would pay them to help endorse their products as they're sending out a TikTok or Instagram, whatever those social media platforms. I'm probably not terribly familiar about that. There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, here's your name, image, and likeness. Go take advantage of it, because there are some inherent risks to young men and women and people that don't have their best interest in mind that will pursue them for this. And that's what we're concerned about. And, it's not that the big bad NCAA that we're trying to retain this and not give this to these young men and women. We're trying to figure out a way that we can do this that ultimately protects them.
Well, thank you for providing that insight. So we're going to move on to two additional topics, and then we'll open it up for the various questions that we might have. And so we talked a little bit about facilities earlier in the conversation, and the Frank O'Mara Track Performance Center, the JB Janelle Hunt Baseball Development Center. I know that, again, when I was on campus not too long ago for a football game, I was just so excited that the football stadium had been completed. So you've mentioned a little bit about what's happening. So did we make sure that anything else that we know that's coming on the horizon to just make this for a great experience for the fans coming to those various events?
Yeah, so, one of the first things I did when I arrived on campus is I met with each of our head coaches, and I took a tour of their facilities with each of them. And two glaring, we've got some, first of all, we have some incredible facilities on this campus, incredible facilities. But two of the sports I thought we were deficient in, or two of our most successful sports were track and field and baseball. If you take a tour of our track and field facility right now, a program that's won 45, 46 national championships between the two of them, we don't have locker rooms that can accommodate the number of student athletes that we have in both of those sports. We have student athletes in those sports sharing metal lockers. They have a training room at the track currently that we can maybe on a good day get 10 student athletes in there. We have over 100 track and field athletes between our men's and women's programs. We had a definitive need to develop a facility for our track and field program. So that's where we have the Frank O'Meara Track and Field High Performance Center. That's going up adjacent to Bud Walton Arena at the south end of the track and field. If you've driven by there, it will be roughly a 20 to 25,000 square foot building. It will have state-of-the-art locker rooms for both our men's and women's programs with enough lockers for each and every one of our student athletes. They will have a shared training room, a shared weight room. They will have a shared meeting space and team lounge for them as well. And that will provide a team that is a national championship men's and women's program, a national championship facility. We're also we're scheduled to host the 21 NCAA Indoor Track and Field National Championships, and so I call it a refresh to the tune of about $5 million, a refresh of the indoor track and field facility where the entire facility is being repainted. We're redoing the entire indoor track. We're getting a new video board, new graphics, new championship banners in anticipation of having a bright and shiny facility to host the national championship in March of 2021. And then the JB and John L. Hunt Baseball Development Facility. We've been to 10 college World Series. I can't remember the last time we hadn't been to an NCAA tournament in baseball, but similar, we didn't have a facility that was at the level of a championship baseball program. So this is a 47,000 square foot facility that will have a new locker room for our baseball program, a new weight room, a training room. They'll have what they call a pitching laboratory because they're not called bullpens anymore because of the computer and analytic systems that are put in this area to really analyze the student athlete and how they pitch. It'll have a hitting facility. It will have coaches' offices. And for our fans, the loge boxes that we built in the north end zone facility here at Razorback Stadium, we're going to have a dozen of those loge boxes out in right field as a part of this facility. And then that'll be on the second level. And then on the third level, what right now we're calling a home run porch, which will be an outdoor seating area that will have some chairs that come up against a drake rail, and we'll have an outdoor bar. So we'll be able to monetize some of that facility there at Baum-Walker Stadium. The last facility we have to address, well, we've got two. We've got to figure out what we're going to do with Barnhill, and then we've got to figure out what we're going to do with Bud Walton. It's hard to believe that Bud Walton Arena would be in its 26th year. It was a beautiful facility 26 years ago. It's still a beautiful facility, but we don't have any of the premium amenities that fans now expect as they attend major sporting events. And so our suites need to be updated. We need to have a club level. The locker room areas for both our men's and women's basketball team in that facility need to be upgraded. Is this an opportunity for us to potentially move our gymnastics program over to Bud Walton Arena out of Barnhill and have some facilities for them here? Barnhill's even older than Bud Walton and in gymnastics, and we compete in volleyball in that facility, and it serves us well. But those are kind of the last two pieces to the puzzle. Before COVID, we probably thought we would address those in a 3 to 5 year window. That may get pushed out a little bit further than we had initially thought because of the financial ramifications of what COVID has put on us, and I think will continue to put on us for the next couple of years.
Thank you. So the last question that we'll talk about, of course, is the importance of connecting with alumni. And as you mentioned, those facilities, as you know, the track facilities and others, of course, you know, as an alumni, I am just all excited about the fact that we do have track records that are still standing to this day. And so I do like to see those records, you know, highlighted in these various facilities. So how can you continue to connect with the alumni, especially, you know, former student athletes, and ensure that they are connected to the university as lifelong graduates of the university? And that'll be our final question, and then we can see if we have time to answer some questions that may have come in.
Sure, Linda. I think, you know, as I talked about our mission, building champions and Razorbacks for life, that Razorbacks for life is that last piece. You know, when you're a student athlete here, you're a student athlete here for life, and you're a member of this athletic community. And I've spent several conversations with Brandy talking about how do we do a better job of engaging our student athletes who are alumni. And Kevin Trainer, who's on the call, added some additional duties to his plate over the course of the past year, so that we had kind of a central clearinghouse within the Department of Athletics and working with the alumni office for our former student athletes. And so Kevin's doing a great job developing databases for all of our sports so that we can better connect and continue to stay connected with each of our student athletes. Because, you know, what has happened is, you know, coaches come and go, some on their own accord, some on the accord of the director of athletics. But when they do leave, a lot of those records go with them, and we lose that connection with former student athletes. And so Kevin, we hope, will be that conduit between our student athletes here in the alumni office, so that we don't lose that connectivity. You know, one of the ideas we had that has been put a little bit on the back burner because of COVID was one of the greatest traditions at the University of Arkansas is to have your name carved in the sidewalk when you're a graduate. And so we wanted to start that tradition for student athletes, where leading up to the athletic facility that you participated in, we want to carve your name as a former student athlete in the sidewalks leading up to those facilities to go along with that tradition of the university. That's got a 7-figure price tag to go back and do that, but we thought that was a really neat way, as we have all these wonderful facilities, to make sure that as a former student athlete, you can always see your name, not only on campus as a graduate, but also adjacent to that athletic facility that you participated and represented the University of Arkansas.
Thank you for that. Very exciting what's coming. So this, we'll check to see, do we have any questions in the chat that we can address? I think we have time for maybe one or two. And if you don't, I know I have one question here, and that one question was specifically related to ensuring how we can have, how parents can have more access to the athletic director and responses when parents do call, as to getting their questions answered and having those return phone calls. So that was in the chat as well. So Hunter, do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. You know, I'll be as responsive as I can to parents when they call. Again, I talked about meeting with many parents on the recruiting visits of their sons and daughters to our campus. The way we're set up as a department is each of our sports programs has a sport administrator. I introduced Dorita Radcliffe as our sport administrator for our men's and women's track and field programs, as well as women's basketball. Kevin Trainer is our sport administrator for baseball. John Fagg, I see, is on the call as our sport administrator for football. I don't know that anybody else is on there, but what a sport administrator is they're that conduit really between myself and the head coach, because of the rigors of my schedule, that can be that direct contact for the head coach and for the parents of those student athletes. And then hopefully that whatever the issue is with that student athlete can be resolved at that level before getting to the director of athletics. Many times they are, sometimes they are not, and I have to be involved, but that's the way we're set up, because the sport administrators really have a much better opportunity to develop relationships with the student athletes and the parents on a regular basis than I do as a director of athletics, just because of the broad nature of my role.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, we have one here. It said, earlier you said that the plane ride to the U of A on your first day was your first time in Northwest Arkansas. So what was your biggest surprise when landing and starting your first week here?
You know what? I started in December, so there were not any leaves on the trees, but my wife and I were amazed at still, regardless of the leaves on the trees, how beautiful Northwest Arkansas was. It is, I think, as we all have found, if you weren't born and raised here, you find that this is a hidden gem of beauty in this area. And so that's what we quickly discovered is all the different things that this area has to offer.
And you know, it's really interesting, or it's got kind of a funny story, because there was a gap in some of my visits to Northwest Arkansas, and I came in one time and I was going to go to the airport, which was right down on the highway, and I realized that the airport had moved to this particular area, and so I was like, what growth? The fact that now the airport is not just right down on the highway, you have to go all through this neighborhood in that little town, and so that was my experience once I found that the airport had moved. The airport had moved.
It had for sure. Brandy, I see you on there. Anything else you wanted me to touch on?
I have to unmute. Did you cover it earlier? I think there was a question in the chat about any response to the Ivy League moving their football schedule, I believe, to the spring.
Sure. I will tell you that that's an easy decision for the Ivy League to make, because they lose money on their athletic program year in and year out. And they're going to save money and financially be in a better place as an institution, because their institution funds their entire athletic program. So that will have very little impact on any decisions we make at this level. You know, the fact that they came out and did that doesn't weigh into our decision at all. They can say that is for the health and safety and well-being of the student athletes, and there's a piece of that is true, but that's also a financial decision for the Ivy League as well.
I just want to thank you, Hunter and Linda, so much for participating in this today. We really appreciate it. Appreciate both of you and your leadership for the university and all that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys all.
Thank you.
Being with us. And Linda, thank you for a great job asking some mostly softball questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining us today, and we have recorded this presentation, so after we get some of the beginning part edited out when people were logging in, we'll try and put that up on our YouTube page. But thank you again for joining us today, and thank you, Hunter and Linda, so much for hosting for us. We really enjoyed being with you today.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Take care. Stay safe.